My girlfriend chose my best friend because I was too boring. A year later, we met again at a wedding, and she was the one catering the event. She tried to ruin my marriage, but everything failed, and she had to pay the price. You know what's truly boring? Having your girlfriend of 3 years tell you that you're too boring while she's packing her bags to move in with your best friend. Nothing spices up an otherwise dull Tuesday evening quite like that. I'm Jake, 31, and according to my ex, Rachel, 29. I'm about as exciting as watching beige paint dry in an accountant's office. Funny thing though, I'm actually a pediatric surgeon. You know, just saving lives, holding beating hearts in my hands, no big deal. Totally boring stuff. Jake, you're just so predictable, Rachel said while stuffing her collection of true crime books into a box, because apparently reading about serial killers is more exciting than dating someone who literally saves kids' lives. When's the last time we did something spontaneous? Well, last week I had to spontaneously remove a Lego man from a kid's nose, I offered. He named it Gerald and didn't want to part with it. Rachel just rolled her eyes. Meanwhile, my best friend, ex-best friend Matt, 30, was waiting outside in his adventurous 2010 Toyota Corolla. Nothing screams excitement like a used car with a check engine light that's been on since Obama's first term. The real kicker? Matt's an accountant, an actual accountant, but he rides a motorcycle on weekends and has a tattoo of a dragon. Well, it's supposed to be a dragon, but it looks more like a lizard with indigestion. But apparently, that's enough to qualify as spontaneous these days. Matt gets me, Rachel explained, trying to fit her healing crystals into her overflowing suitcase. He understands that life is about taking risks. He does our taxes with 4 different calculators just to be sure. At least he suggests fun date ideas, she added. Going to Renaissance fairs dressed as historically inaccurate Vikings is your definition of fun? But you can't argue with someone who's already mentally picked out her Viking wedding dress. I stood there as they drove off into the sunset, Matt checking his tire pressure and updating his insurance because, safety first. I spent the next few months being boringly successful at my job, boringly buying a new house, and boringly meeting the actual love of my life, Emma, 28, who thought saving children was slightly more impressive than knowing how to say huzzah in Old English. Life was good. Boring, but good. Then Kameth wedding planning. Emma and I wanted something simple, elegant, and drama-free. We hired the best caterer in town, the Golden Platter, without checking who owned it. Big mistake. Huge. Guess who bought the company 6 months ago and would personally be overseeing our wedding menu? That's right, Rachel. The first need more excitement, Johnson now proudly owns the Golden Platter, and apparently she's a certified culinary artist. Because nothing says I found myself quite like arranging canapes into Instagram-worthy patterns, but you know what's not boring? Revenge. Serve date exactly 165. Let me paint you a picture of the exact moment my soul left my body. I am sitting in the Golden Platter's waiting room, flipping through their portfolio, when Rachel walks in, looking like Martha Stewart's evil millennial sister. You know, that moment in horror movies when the protagonist realizes they're totally screwed? Yeah. Multiply that by my ex-best friend's dragon tattoo. Jake. Oh my God, Rachel squealed, her voice hitting that pitch that makes dogs howl in neighboring states. You're getting married? How predictable. Fun fact, did you know it's possible to grip a wedding planning binder so hard that it actually screams? Because I'm pretty sure mine did. Emma, bless her heart, had no idea what kind of nuclear bomb of awkward she had just walked into. Your work is amazing, she gushed. I follow you on Instagram. That gravity-defying champagne fountain you did last week? Incredible. I tried sending telepathic warnings. Honey, no. That's my ex. The one who thought saving kids was boring. We have to book you, Emma continued, completely missing my face doing the universal expression for please stop talking. Oh, I don't know. Rachel twirled her hair, pretending to check her schedule. We're pretty booked up. I jumped in. Maybe someone who doesn't have a history of running off with their clients' best friends. Emma's head whipped around so fast I heard vertebrae crack. This is the Rachel, I said with a hint of sarcasm, letting Emma know just who we were dealing with. Rachel beamed like being known as a homewrecker was some kind of achievement. Though, technically, Jake, Matt, and I didn't work out, she said with a shrug. He was too adventurous. I laughed so hard I actually snorted. The man who triple checks his grocery list was too adventurous? What happened? Did he buy generic brand cereal instead of name brand? He wanted to go skydiving without checking the weather forecast first? Emma was watching this exchange like it was a tennis match played with hand grenades. Jake, honey, can we talk privately in the hallway? Emma suggested. I know this is awkward. Awkward? Honey, this is like having a root canal performed by your ex while they critique your life choices, I said. But she's the best in the business. Have you seen her reviews? Her waiting list is 6 months long. At that point, Emma had a mischievous smile cross her face. You know, don't you think it's a little poetic, having the woman who called you boring witness just how exciting your life has become? I looked at Emma, my beautiful, brilliant fiancée, who apparently had a streak of evil genius I hadn't noticed before. You're not just booking her despite her, are you? Of course not, Emma said, her eyes sparkling. I'm booking her because she's the best. The spite is just a delicious bonus. Back in Rachel's office, she was already drafting up contracts. I suppose I could squeeze you in, Rachel said, as though she was bestowing a favor. Though my usual rate has increased, money's not an issue, Emma said sweetly. Jake's boring job as a pediatric surgeon pays quite well. And that, dear readers, is how I ended up hiring my ex-girlfriend to cater my wedding. But here's a little secret. Emma might think she's got the perfect revenge planned, but she hasn't seen what I've got cooking. Because while Rachel's busy planning her Instagram-worthy menu, I'm planning something special. Something that would make even Matt triple check his calculations. Let's just say, boring people have the best revenge ideas. We've got a lot of quiet time to think. As the wedding day approached, I found myself thinking more and more about the revenge I had planned. Rachel, always the overachiever, was busy arranging her so-called Instagram-worthy menu, meticulously crafting every detail as though she were the culinary goddess she believed herself to be. Meanwhile, Emma and I were planning the wedding over dreams, simple, elegant, and most importantly, free of drama. Well, almost. Rachel, of course, was determined to inject her chaotic energy into every aspect of the day. She was a whirlwind of so-called professionalism, making sure every canapé looked Instagram ready and the food was perfect. I had to admit, she was good at what she did. It was almost surreal seeing her in action. The same woman who couldn't microwave mac and cheese without burning it, now arranging wine pairings and making wild mushroom risotto. The whole thing had an eerie sense of irony. Emma, bless her, was trying to keep everything calm, but I could tell she was just as uncomfortable with the whole situation as I was. She kept reminding me that Rachel was the best caterer in town, and even though she was my ex, this was business. But I couldn't help but feel like Rachel was setting the stage for something more. She wasn't just catering the wedding. She was trying to make a statement, trying to prove that she could be better than me at something. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had a plan. And it was going to be something boring, methodical, precise, and above all, patient. Something Rachel never saw coming. The day before the wedding, everything seemed to be going smoothly. The venue was decorated beautifully, the food was being prepped, and all that was left was the final walkthrough. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. I had spent too much time planning, too much energy setting everything up, and now it was time to set my plan into motion. Emma and I had arranged a backup plan for everything. A second caterer, a trusted team ready to step in if things went south. We had a guy named Steve, who was guarding the wedding cake like a hawk, watching it as though it was the Holy Grail. We also had a whole team of backup servers just in case something went wrong. If Rachel thought she could sabotage my day, she was going to find out just how boring and methodical I could be. The morning of the wedding, I was already on high alert. Rachel was acting like everything was under control, but I could tell she was feeling the pressure. She kept making little comments about how she was the best, how everything had to be perfect, how she was going to make sure my wedding day was special. That's when I knew she was up to something. She was trying to steal the spotlight, make herself center of attention at a wedding that wasn't about her. The wedding itself was beautiful. Emma was stunning, of course, and I couldn't have been more in love with her. Everything was going as planned, but as we sat down to eat, that's when the first sign of trouble appeared. I hadn't even taken a bite of my food when I started to notice something wasn't right. The lamb. Oh God, the lamb. The moment the covers came off the serving trays, I could smell it. The stench hit me like a brick wall. It was rancid. The lamb was spoiled, rotten, and it smelled like something you'd find at the bottom of a dumpster. My stomach churned, and I looked around at the guests, whose faces were all going from confused to horrified in a matter of seconds. Rachel rushed over, the picture of professional concern. "The refrigeration unit must have malfunctioned," she said, trying to save face. "How could this happen?" A waiter, definitely on her payroll, piped up. "We saw the groom go into the kitchen earlier. I hadn't even been anywhere near the kitchen." But somehow, Rachel had managed to twist the narrative. The whispers began, guests connecting imaginary dots faster than a conspiracy theorist after too much coffee. Food poisoning? Bathroom visits? Bad meat? It was like watching a game of Clue where I was both the victim and the accused. I didn't even have time to process it when Rachel stood there, managing to look mortified and secretly delighted all at once. The cat who had just figured out how to open the canary cage. "Don't worry," she announced, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "We have backup entrees." Though she glanced at me with mock sincerity. Maybe we should have them tested first, given the circumstances. I stared at her, holding back the bile that was rising in my throat. Emma, ever the calm one, squeezed my hand under the table. She was in on the plan. She knew what I had set up. I wanted to scream, to expose Rachel for what she was, but I knew that would be playing into her hands. I had to let her think she was winning. I had to let her think she was getting the last laugh. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Rachel continued with her little charade, serving the backup food and trying to act like everything was fine. But the whispers wouldn't stop. I could hear the guests talking about the groom's suspicious bathroom trip and the bad meat. It was like a game of telephone gone horribly wrong. And all I could think was, this is it. She's done. I knew the trap had been set, and I was just waiting for Rachel to walk right into it. As the night went on, I kept my eye on her. She was so busy trying to salvage the disaster she'd created, so intent on maintaining her professional image that she didn't realize she was being watched. Every move, every slip-up was being documented. I had cameras in place, and I wasn't the only one who noticed. Guests had started to whisper, and Rachel's carefully crafted reputation was starting to crack. And then the moment I'd been waiting for came. The health department arrived. The moment the health department walked into the venue, I knew Rachel's world was about to collapse. I had expected the wedding to be a little chaotic, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. The health department had arrived unexpectedly, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. The inspectors, serious as always, started reviewing the catering area. Rachel, trying to maintain her composure, greeted them with a forced smile. I stood off to the side, watching the scene unfold like a slow-motion disaster. I was, as always, pretending to be completely unaware of what was happening. As the lead inspector went over the paperwork, Rachel's smile started to fade, but she still clung to the hope that she could talk her way out of it. "Oh, this is just a misunderstanding," she said, trying to sound calm, but I could hear the nervous tremor in her voice. "We've been in business for years. I'm sure there's no issue here." The inspector didn't seem convinced. "We've received an anonymous tip about some discrepancies with the refrigeration units," he said, eyeing her closely. Rachel tried to explain it away, but I knew better. The trap was already set. "Isn't this your company?" the inspector asked, turning to Rachel as the camera footage was reviewed. "Yes, it's mine," Rachel replied, her confidence beginning to crack. "And, according to this footage," the inspector continued, "we see someone entering the kitchen unauthorized at 3:47 p.m., carrying what appears to be non-refrigerated meat." Rachel went pale as the footage played out on the screen. The camera clearly showed her entering the kitchen, walking with a tray of meat, and placing it on the serving trays just before dinner was served. It was a smoking gun. I watched as Rachel's face turned from nervous to panicked. She knew it was over. The evidence was irrefutable, and her entire business was on the line. but she tried one last-ditch effort to salvage some dignity. "Well, it must be a mistake," she stammered. "I didn't do anything wrong. The meat was fine when it was delivered." The lead inspector shook his head. "We'll be reporting this to the health department and reviewing all relevant documentation. This isn't something you can cover up with excuses." I could see her face turning red with frustration. She was on the verge of losing everything she had worked so hard for, all because of one moment of petty revenge. As the inspection continued, Rachel became more desperate. She kept insisting it wasn't her fault, blaming everyone else but herself. But by this point, I could see that the damage was done. She had dug her own grave, and now there was no way out. The worst part, she was still trying to save face. Even when she knew she was caught red-handed, she was trying to act like it was just a small mistake. But everyone could see through it. Meanwhile, the first stayed calm, knowing that everything I had planned was finally coming together. Emma was by my side, whispering encouragement, and I knew that I was about to see Rachel's entire empire crumble. The best part of this whole thing was that she had no idea that this was coming. She thought she could outsmart me, that she could destroy my wedding day. But instead, she had set herself up for the biggest fall of her life. The health department inspectors finished their report, and Rachel's face went from a nervous flush to pure shock as they handed her a copy of their findings. The look on her face was priceless. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, and it felt like the sweetest kind of justice. But the night didn't end there. As the inspectors left, the whispers started. Guests were talking about what had happened, about how the meat had been spoiled, and how Rachel had been caught tampering with the food. Rachel, in her typical fashion, tried to control the narrative, but no one was buying it. Her reputation, built on Instagram posts and perfectly arranged canapes, was falling apart. Emma squeezed my hand as we watched the chaos unfold. "This is it," she whispered. "She's done." I nodded, my eyes never leaving Rachel, who was standing there, trying to explain herself to the remaining guests. I could hear her weak excuses and see her failing attempts to salvage whatever was left of her credibility, but it didn't matter. The truth was out, and Rachel's business was finished. No amount of spin could save her now. Later that night, when the reception had quieted down and the guests began to leave, I received a phone call. It was from the health department. They confirmed that the report had been filed, and Rachel's catering license was under review. The consequences were coming, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But that wasn't the end of it. What Rachel didn't know was that I had another trick up my sleeve. I had already reached out to a few journalists about the story anonymously, of course. They were eager to hear about the scandal, about the Instagram famous caterer who had tried to ruin a wedding with spoiled meat. The story was bound to make headlines, and it did. Within days, Rachel's downfall became local news. Her carefully crafted social media empire, once filled with beautiful food photos and inspirational quotes, now showed nothing but negative reviews and complaints. People were sharing the story of her catering disaster, and it spread like wildfire. The icing on the cake? Matt, my ex-best friend, actually reached out to confirm the story. Apparently, Rachel had bragged to him about her plan beforehand, and he had the texts to prove it. He sent them over to me, along with a message that said, "I always knew she was crazy. Should have stuck with boring." Rachel's business was dead. Her reputation was in tatters. She was facing legal action, both civil and potentially criminal, all because she thought the boring guy wouldn't fight back. Well, Rachel, you were wrong. And now you're left with nothing. 2 weeks after the Golden Platter's spectacular fall from grace, my phone rang. I didn't even need to check the caller ID. It knew exactly who it was. Rachel. The sound of her name flashing on the screen was like a warning sign for an incoming natural disaster. "Hello? Jake." "You boring, vindictive bastard," Rachel's voice screeched as soon as I picked up. I could hear the venom in her tone. It was the kind of voice that made you think she was about to burst into flames. "Having trouble with the health department?" I asked calmly, though I could feel the tiniest grin forming at the corners of my lips. "You destroyed my business," she wailed. "My reputation. Do you know how long it took me to build my Instagram following? I put in the work, Jake. I was doing well." I raised an eyebrow. "Your 6-month-old business?" I asked. You bought it with Gerald's alimony money, and your following was built on food pictures and pretending to be perfect. But you know what they say, karma's a bitch, she hissed in frustration. I can't believe you did this to me, all because I was trying to teach you a lesson. I wanted to show you how exciting life could be, how I could be better than you. I sighed dramatically. You wanted to show me how exciting life could be by serving spoiled lamb to my elderly relative at my wedding reception? Wow, Rachel. So thrilling. What's next? Are you going to start selling snake oil at farmers markets? She didn't have a comeback for that. What you did was so petty, Jake. You think you're some hero, some saint, but all you did was make sure I lost everything. I lost everything because of you. Her voice cracked, like she was about to cry. Really? I asked, pretending to be shocked. You lost everything because of me? You mean you lost everything because you tried to sabotage my wedding, serve spoiled food, and then tried to blame me for it? Ugh, you wouldn't understand. I wanted you to feel how exciting life could be. You're so boring, Jake. I hate you. I rolled my eyes, not surprised at all. No, Rachel, you could have just been a decent person and, I don't know, done your job instead of trying to ruin my wedding. But I guess being exciting means more to you than actually having any integrity. The irony of it all was delicious. She had built an empire on Instagram posts about living life to the fullest. But in reality, she was the one who couldn't handle her own mess when things went wrong. You think you've won, don't you? Rachel sneered. I'm going to sue you for this. I'll drag your boring little life through the mud, and you'll regret ever crossing me. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Oh, you're going to sue me? Go ahead. You're about as good at suing people as you are at cooking, which is to say not very good at all. But here's the thing, Rachel. I'm not the one who's getting sued. You are. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. It was like she was processing what I just said. What do you mean? She asked finally, her voice suddenly small and unsure. I leaned back in my chair casually. Well, Rachel, when we hired you to cater our wedding, we had a little backup plan. You see, while you were busy running around serving rotten lamb and making up stories, Emma and I were quietly documenting everything. All the health code violations, all the kitchen footage, and everything that went wrong at the wedding. We have it all. Rachel let out a sound that was somewhere between a choke and a gasp. You what? She asked, incredulously. You documented everything? Oh, absolutely, I said, enjoying the moment far more than I probably should have. We even had cameras set up to make sure everything was on the up and up. Funny thing about being boring and methodical, Rachel, it means I always have a backup plan and I always keep my receipts, literally. There was a long pause. I could practically hear her mind spinning. That's not fair, Jake, she finally stammered. You can't do that. You're ruining my life. Well, if you hadn't tried to ruin mine, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation, I said. But don't worry, it's not over yet. The next few days were a whirlwind. Emma and I watched as Rachel's world slowly crumbled. News of the Golden Platter's health violations spread like wildfire. The Instagram posts, once filled with perfectly curated food photos, turned into a series of complaints and negative reviews. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly Rachel was the subject of every joke in the city. But it wasn't just the social media fallout. No, the real fun was just beginning. The health department launched an official investigation into the Golden Platter. Security footage showed Rachel entering the kitchen and tampering with refrigeration units, and it was all time-stamped and documented. It wasn't just an accident, it was deliberate. Then came the lawsuit. Emma and I filed for damages, seeking compensation for the ruined food and the emotional distress of dealing with Rachel's sabotage. We were calm, methodical, and more importantly, we had the evidence. Rachel, on the other hand, was scrambling to save face. She tried to make excuses, but no one was buying them. Then came the final blow. A month later, Rachel called me again. I picked up the phone, mostly out of curiosity, and partially because I was in the middle of organizing my sock drawer. Hello, Rachel. Having trouble with Yelp reviews? Her voice was high-pitched, frantic. You destroyed my business, my life. I can't believe you did this to me. I had followers. Deals. You ruined everything. I smiled. Well, I did warn you. Karma's a real thing. Maybe if you'd focused on doing your job and not trying to make everything a drama, you wouldn't be in this mess. Rachel let out a scream. You're enjoying this, aren't you? This boring, methodical destruction of everything I built? I see dramatically. It's not about enjoying it. It's about being smart enough to know when to play the long game. And you, Rachel, just walked right into it. Your mistakes were my victory. She was silent for a moment before whispering, I really fucked up, didn't I? I could almost hear the tears in her voice. Spectacularly, I said, savoring the moment. But hey, at least you made life exciting, right? After she hung up, I smiled to myself. As Emma and I enjoyed our honeymoon quiet, peaceful, and definitely boring, I knew we had won. As for Rachel, well, she was left to pick up the pieces of a business that had crumbled under its own weight. 2 weeks after our wedding, Rachel's catering business collapsed completely. She lost her catering license, her reputation, and her social media empire. The golden platter was no more, and people were starting to remember her as the woman who tried to ruin a wedding with spoiled food. It was the perfect karma. And in the end, Emma and I didn't just get the revenge we'd planned. We got the perfect beginning to our life together. Because in the end, you know what's really boring? Living well and having the last laugh.